Democrats are branding Trump as a criminal.
It's legally pathetic.
It's clickbait. It is an unbelievable abuse of justice.
Pure balderdash.
My heart is broken. I had some tears in my eyes.
Looking a little emotional. I feel the same way.
Okay, so you see some people there who are actually aggrieved. They're feeling rage, they're feeling sadness. Some of them have been outed already as deeply despising Donald Trump, but they know that they need to pretend to care about the charges that he's facing, so they're doing their best. And at the same time, they're attempting to convince their audience that the charges that Trump are facing is not just about him and the things that he's done. This is something much bigger and much more dangerous. Watch.
If there's a mugshot of Donald Trump, it'll be in dorm rooms and on t-shirts.
He is an OG.
Even if convicted, that's not going to stop him.
Donald Trump could run in part on saying, I'm going to pardon myself and go after the deep state.
It's not open for debate that we live in a police state.
It's like Stalin's purges.
We're crossing the Rubicon here.
This is a political Rubicon that has been crossed.
They have crossed the Rubicon.
Basically, it's one party hunting another. It almost feels like they're pushing the population to react.
It is a war on conservatism and MAGA.
They want you to strike out.
People better be careful, and that's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, so many of them saying they want war. We're gonna give you a couple of examples of that. In some cases, you have them pushing back saying, don't do that, don't give them what they want. But all too often, these pundits are just saying, it's almost like they want you to strike back. Back to you. Like, I feel like you have a responsibility maybe following the coup to say that violence is a bad thing and we shouldn't pursue it. But anyway, they're going through a lot, clearly.
Yeah, so look guys, there's two different kinds of political prosecutions, not persecutions, okay? So one is politically motivated, and that's the Banana Republic thing that everybody talks about. I think the best example of that is what they did to Lula in Brazil. So the right wing saw someone who was incredibly popular, progressive. He was in office, and he was, among other things, wanted the natural resources of Brazil to be for the people of Brazil. I think his popularity was like 78%, etc. They literally invented corruption charges against him. And of all people, Glenn Greenwald, back when he was sane, had done brilliant reporting on that and exposed it 100%. So that's where you make up evidence and you go and unjustly imprison a political opponent. Then there's the other kind where you say, okay, somebody in power did something wrong, we should hold them accountable. That is not a banana republic. That's actually the opposite of a banana republic. So for example, in France, Sarkozy has been up on several charges. He used to be the leader of the country. Well, yes, but one of them, by the way, I believe is on campaign finance violations. Well, if you break the law and there's fraud and corruption charges, Netanyahu was under corruption charges. So there's tons of places where there's someone who's in charge that breaks the law, and in a developed country, you hold them accountable because there is such a thing as rule of law. So the question isn't, is the person a politician? Because they should never get a pass for being a politician, and they should not be persecuted for being a politician. The question is, did they break the law or didn't they? Now, if you notice, none of those guys, they just keep saying like, it's just ridiculous that they charged him on this. They don't say that he didn't do it, because everyone knows he definitely did it. They're just saying, well, it had something to do with sex, and that seems silly. And technical violations, bookkeeping. Now you're supposed to keep your books right? Well, yeah, you're supposed to keep your books right.
Something to do with sex didn't matter when Bill Clinton was in office to any of these people.
Yeah, when it was about Bill Clinton on something far, far, far less. They're like, put him away, right? When it's Trump and he's broken like half a dozen laws in this one case, they're like, whatever, man. Okay, no, whatever, man is not a legal defense. So, and all these guys, none of them even mean it, to what John said earlier. These guys, half of them, no, what am I talking about? 98% of them hate Trump, right? So they go out there and they do this performative theatrics where they're like, I almost cried, I had tears in my eyes, right? And then they encourage the violence and they're like, I'm not saying people should do something, but like, I mean, they did everything but wink. You saw the video. They're like, they're crossing the Rubicon. And there's one last thing about crossing the Rubicon. It's not just threats of potential street violence and stochastic terrorism. It is a warning. If you come for our lawbreakers, We're gonna come for your politicians, whether they broke the law or didn't break the law. We don't care. We're gonna pretend this isn't about the law. We're gonna pretend that we're just randomly prosecuting politicians on both sides, so that when I come to arrest your political leaders randomly, my followers will say, oh yeah, we're just striking back. So what that they didn't break the law? So what, okay? They did it to us. Guaranteed. That is what they will say word for word.
Yeah. And there's, the other part of it is that they're saying things just to create this echo chamber. And that happens by accident too, is that they do create this. I mean, say you looked at the bridge that they showed those people out on. There aren't a lot of people in the streets upset about this. They're making this happen because the people that watch their shows are pretty excited about it, and they're wrong about it. As Johnny pointed out early in the show, New York doesn't release mug shots, and I don't disagree. That's the only person I don't disagree with. That mug shot, it'll be Donald Trump with his $1 million smile. It's not going to be some somber guy in a jumpsuit. It's going to, I would say, become very popular once it's leaked by TMZ or whoever would let it out. But they don't release those things. You cannot also pardon someone federally. Only Governor Hochul, I think, can pardon Donald Trump, and I don't see that happening. You can't pardon someone from, if Trump were to become president again, he could not pardon himself in a state crime. That will play later in the federal crimes that he will likely be indicted for. So this is, they're just grasping at straws. I'm sure none of them know who crossed the Rubicon in the first place. They're saying it because they're saying it. It was Julius Caesar, by the way, but I
think it was Washington.
But it was Washington, and then it was, well, he crossed it later. It's first American to cross, I think. And so this is the theater of what we knew would happen. These are scripts that were written weeks ago for when these would come down. Yeah. These guests were probably booked weeks ago for when it came down, and here's the fruits of all that.
We've touched on this topic, but I want to set us up for a conversation though. There have previously been calls by Donald Trump and many of his supporters to protest. When he had announced that he was going to be arrested a week and a half ago and it didn't happen, there were calls for it and there were many little protests. There are dozens of them. But anyway, not many people actually came together. And so far, after the indictments have been announced, again, there have not been a lot of people. I think 20 people were outside of Mar-a-Lago in a show of support, if that can be said to be a show of support. But today, that wasn't the big day, obviously. The big day potentially is Tuesday, and some people will be there. We're gonna get to that in one sec, but first, I just wanna remind you that Marjorie Greene is saying that Democrats want civil war. I've asked many of the Democrats I know, and none of them seem to want civil war, but she's sure of it. And then goes on to, again, everybody is convinced that George Soros is behind this guy that Soros has not donated to, and Soros wants full control. So a little bit of anti-Semitism. Marjorie Greene will never learn her lessons, and she doesn't have to because there's no accountability. More importantly, though, she says that she's going to New York on Tuesday. We must protest the unconstitutional witch hunt, she says, which marks a pretty big change of heart from 13 days ago when she tweeted, "We don't need to protest about the communists, Democrats planning to arrest President Trump." She at that point was saying, no, like when they say that we're gonna protest and hurt people, that's a false flag, they're gonna do it. So don't protest because that'll set them up to do it. Less than 2 weeks later, she is now apparently going to be headed to New York. And so the protests thus far haven't really materialized, but I am curious what both of you think. This is the day he'll actually be arrested. I don't know if between now and then he'll call for them to protest. He seems to have backed off a little bit on the violent, like calls for violence. Do you think, is she gonna be there? Is she gonna be leading the next January 6th? What's gonna happen come Tuesday?
Okay, so a couple things. First of all, under her own logic, she is the false flag operation. Like, I don't think there's a false flag operation, but she said, man, if anybody goes to protest, that's the FBI doing a false flag operation. She said right afterwards, I'm going to protest. Okay, I mean, should I take you at your word? Okay.
Green is Antifa.
Apparently, and deep state, okay? I thought she was mainly deep margarine, but okay. So in her tweet about Soros, this is important. Look, important distinction. Soros didn't give to Alvin Bragg directly, and he says he's never met him. But his political organizations did give to Color of Change, which I think is a wonderful organization overall. But Color of Change did give a lot of money to Alvin Bragg. So it's not to say that Soros's money never got to Alvin Bragg. It did. Jonathan Soros, his son, also donated, but in his case directly to Alvin Bragg, a lot less, but donated to him directly. So now, so I'm not in the camp of there are no donors and the donors don't matter and nobody cares about the donors. I'm in the exact opposite camp. And if I could, I'd take all the money out of politics, including every dime of George Soros's and Jonathan Soros and every other Soros and Koch brothers and Mercers and people on both sides, okay? But she said at the end of her tweet, and Soros wants war to destabilize America and gain full control. That's deeply anti-Semitic, okay? And deranged. So let me explain for those of you who might not know. Really, there's a history behind it. So in the lead up to World War II, the fascists said the Jews were responsible for World War I. They started the war, they start the wars. They're responsible. Why did they do it? Because they want to control everything. I mean, this is as close to word for word of that kind of fascist propaganda as you will see anywhere. And there's tons of non-Jewish donors that they could pick from, including corporations. ExxonMobil, Big Pharma. I mean, my God, the right wing hates Big Pharma. You could easily say, look at Big Pharma donating to X, Y, or Z, right? Or to other prosecutors, etc. Right? No, they always pick the Jewish donor. And okay, look, they're among the donors. I want to get their money out too. But then to say that he's going to start a war within the country because Soros alone wants full control, that's not just, guys, first of all, just now you know the history, so it's definitely anti-Semitic and it's meant to be anti-Semitic. But on top of that, don't like people in her district, you don't get that that's deranged? Like, here's what the donors want: money. 9 out of 10 times they want money. So ExxonMobil, Pfizer, Sheldon Adelson, Charles Koch, they all donate so they can get more money, okay? Having nothing to do with their religion or background or whether they're even a human being. So now Soros would say no, he does it out of the goodness of his heart, he's trying to help different causes, etc. Maybe you take him at his word, maybe you don't. I don't care. Don't take him at his word. Say he's a liar, say he just wants the money. But to say that he wants to start a war so that Americans will murder each other and then he could have full control, that's deranged. None of them, ExxonMobil doesn't want that. I hate Charles Koch and he doesn't want that. Soros doesn't want it. You'd have to be a lunatic to believe that.
Disney maybe.
Right. They can make a good movie out of it.
One thing I will say is that in these calls to arms that are happening, and that I think that the relentless prosecution of the January 6th offenders is informing the fact that there isn't, and there's nothing predicted of any kind of in the street violence uprising. I really think that you have to give credit to the Justice Department for what they've been doing with the January 6th defendants, because this is not just a party anymore. People are going to jail for a long period of time, and hopefully these calls to arms that have been going out and calls to take back our streets or whatever the hell they want to call it won't materialize around the legitimate indictment, it would seem, of Donald Trump.
Lastly on this, if you're a MAGA guy and you don't believe any of us and you love Trump and you want to go protest, okay, no problem. Keep it peaceful if you can. If you're peaceful, I don't mind you. Of course. I don't know about anybody else. None of us mind you protesting. God bless. Have at it, Oz. Okay. And by the way, a lot of the people that went on January 6th did not go into the building. They just came to watch the speech and went home. Nothing wrong with that. Okay. The people that went into the building and did the violence and threatened the violence is the problem, right? So, but if you're going to do that and you might get arrested, why don't you ask Donald Trump, demand of Donald Trump that he pays the legal fees? He raised hundreds of millions of dollars for legal defense. He didn't spend one dime of it on any of you guys, not us. Who cares about us? The MAGA guys, the most hardcore MAGA guys who said, I'll go into the building for you. I'll be your private militia for you. I'll execute your vice president for you. I'll do anything for you. He hasn't given them a dime. When are you gonna realize the guy's a con man? At least ask for, if he's gonna call them martyrs and political prisoners, ask that he pay for their legal defense, which he can afford so easily with the money you gave him. It's not even his money. It's the money you gave him.
Probably not gonna happen.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges, You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.